You know, last Wednesday was the 20th day of the month of Tevis. And the 20th day of the month of Tevis is the yortzeit of the great Rabbi Moshe ben Maimonides, Rambam, who died on that day in the year 4964 or 1204. He was laid to rest in the city of Tiberias in the Holy Land. The following legend relates the strange circumstances which led to his burial in that city. The Rambam was born in Cordova, Spain, but much of his early life was spent in wandering from country to country in search of a place that would be safe for a Jew to live in. The last and most important years of his life, Maimonides spent in Fostat, which is Old Cairo in Egypt, where he wrote his famous books, where he also served as personal physician to Sultan Saladin, and after Saladin's death, as personal physician to his son Al-Afdal. When the Rambam felt that his last days were near, he told his family and his friends that he wished to be interred in the Holy Land, but he did not say exactly where in the Holy Land he wished to be laid to rest. The Rambam died on the 20th of Tevis, and the news spread like lightning, for he was the most famous and greatest man of his generation. Sadly and mournfully, the body of the Rambam was placed in a wooden coffin, which was firmly attached to the back of a camel, and accompanied by a whole caravan of mourners. The body was carried towards the Holy Land. In the meantime, the sad news of Rambam's death also reached the Jews in the Holy Land. All the important Jewish communities sent special delegates to meet and join the Rambam's funeral procession, and to see to it that he would be brought and laid to rest in their particular city. There was much argument among the delegates from the Holy Land, as each tried to convince the others why his city should be given the honor. The delegates from Jerusalem were certain that the great honor of the Rambam's presence belonged to the holy city, and that he should be laid to rest on Mount Olives. The delegates from Hebron argued that Hebron, the place of the cave of the Machpelah, was the most fitting resting place for the Rambam, while the delegates from Meron claimed that in Meron, near the resting place of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, was the most fitting resting place for the Rambam. The arguments continued all the way until the whole procession reached the border of the Holy Land. Suddenly, a band of armed Bedouins appeared in the distance, heading straight for the caravan. All the people fled for their lives, leaving the Rambam's coffin unattended. The Bedouins immediately turned their greedy attention to the wooden box, thinking that it contained gold and precious things. They were quite disappointed when they discovered that it contained a dead body. So they wished to remove the coffin in order to free the camel and make off with it. But try as they did, they could not move the coffin. They realized that it contained the body of a holy man. Greatly frightened, they fell on their knees and begged the holy man's forgiveness. Then they quickly disappeared. The camel with Maimonides' body continued its journey, going on and on without a stop, until it arrived at the gates of the city of Tiberias. At a place outside the city, the camel stopped and knelt and waited. The Jews from Tiberias and surrounding communities realized that the saintly Rambam had chosen that place as his place of rest. This was the place where many of the wise sages of Tiberias were buried, so they laid the saintly Rambam to rest right there. Every year on the 20th of Tevis, many Jews come to the tomb of the holy Rambam, where they pray and offer tzedakah in memory of this great and holy man, of whom it was said that from Moshe Rabbeinu to Moshe ben Maimon, there was none like Moshe ben Maimon. Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon, the Rambam, whose life story we have already told you some time ago, was at one time under serious suspicion. Among the great books that he had written were certain books which were considered dangerous to students who were not mature thinkers and scholars. The Rambam's Talmudic works were recognized by all the rabbis and scholars of his age and after as truly outstanding and gigantic. But the Rambam was also an outstanding physician, scientist, and thinker, and he wrote a guide to the perplexed, which he hoped would also be favorably received. Indeed, those who were perplexed and confused about the true beliefs of the Jewish faith found in this book a guide to the true Jewish way of life. On the other hand, some rabbis feared that when the book would be read by students who were not confused, it would create confusion in their minds and lead them astray. Some even doubted whether the same person wrote both the Mishnah Torah, the halachic work of Maimonides known simply as the Rambam, and the Moreh Nevuchim, which is the guide to the perplexed. And so, as the story goes on, the rabbis of Germany decided to send one of their colleagues to Cordova in Spain, where the Rambam was born and and lived, in order to find out for himself what sort of a man was this great Rambam. The emissary, his name was Rabbi Meir, accompanied by one of his senior students, made the long and difficult journey to Spain. Coming to the outskirts of Cordova, Rabbi Meir and his companion decided to take a rest on the banks of the river and to refresh themselves from the river's clear water. Having slaked his thirst, Rabbi Meir took out a sefer from his bundle and began to study. After a while, the travelers continued on their journey, but neither of them noticed that Rabbi Meir had left the sefer on the bank of the river. Arriving at the house of the Rambam, Rabbi Meir knocked on the door. A servant opened the door and asked the visitor in. "My master is having lunch. Who shall I say wishes to see him?" the servant asked. "Just tell your master that the visitor sends his compliments and wishes him to enjoy the eggs he is eating," Rabbi Meir replied. A few moments later, the servant returned, bringing back the message. "My master bids you welcome. Also wishes to remind you that you left the book on the bank of the river." Rabbi Meir hastily inspected his bag. Indeed, the book was missing. He sent his companion to retrieve it. Presently, the Rambam came into the waiting room and heartily welcomed the rabbi from Germany. He invited his visitor to eat with him. A strange dish was served. It looked like a human hand. Rabbi Meir recalled inwardly, "Is it possible that the Rambam is a cannibal, eating human flesh?" he thought, and he declined the dish, saying he was not very hungry. "Well then, perhaps you will have some good wine to drink," the Rambam suggested, and he called out, "Petrus, fetch us some wine from the cellar." Again Rabbi Meir was taken aback. Is it possible that the Rambam drinks wine which is touched by a non-Jew contrary to Jewish law? Rabbi Meir politely refused the wine, asking for water instead. Feeling tired and also somewhat upset, Rabbi Meir excused himself and accepted the suggestion of his host to retire to bed. "We shall postpone our banquet for tomorrow," the Rambam said, and turning to his servant, he said to him, "Petrus, tomorrow you will kill the calf for the banquet in honor of our guest." For the third time, Rabbi Meir was shocked. Isn't the Rambam sending for the shochet, he thought? Does he not believe in shechita anymore? God forbid. Has he really strayed so completely from the Jewish way of life? Rabbi Meir paced the floor of his room all night. However tired he was from his long journey, he could not sleep. He was greatly disturbed and agitated. Who would have thought such things possible of a great man? He decided that he would speak quite frankly with the Rambam in the morning. He would tell him the purpose of his visit and would demand an explanation. Early the following morning, the servant knocked at his door and said that the master wished to speak to him. Again the Rambam greeted him with a gracious smile And without giving Rabbi Meir a chance to ask any questions, he said to his visitor, "My good friend, I know why you have come all the way from Germany to visit with me. You have been sent to see with your own eyes what sort of a man I am, and whether I am still a believing and practicing Jew. I also know why you refused to eat last night and to drink my wine. I am also aware that you did not sleep a wink last night, and that you were haunted by the terrible thought that I seem to have offered you human flesh, forbidden wine, and finally treifa meat. Now, my friend, let me explain all these strange things, and you will see how easily one can fall into error and suspicion if one lets one's imagination get out of hand. How little one can rely on one's own eyes and ears, much less on hearsay. You see," continued the Rambam, "the strange dish that looked to you like a human hand was nothing else but a special vegetable that grows in this country, but not in yours. It is a very wholesome food. You know, I am a doctor, and I attach great importance to a balanced diet." Rabbi Meir now felt ashamed that he should have suspected the Rambam of such a dreadful thing. But how come you ordered your non-Jewish servant to bring the wine from the cellar?" Rabbi Meir asked. "God forbid that I should do such a thing. You see, my servant Petrus is a Jew from birth, a very observant Jew. Don't let the name mislead you. Petrus was the name of the father of one of our sages, Rabbi Yosef Bar Petrus. In the Gemara we find this, or in the Medrash of Bereshis Rabbah. And according to the Gemara and Yerushalmi, Moed Kotan, Rabbi Yosef Bar Petrus was the father-in-law of the great sage, Rabbi Joshua ben Levi. Again, Rabbi Meir felt ashamed that he should have suspected the Rambam of such a thing. He was now eagerly awaiting for the explanation of the killing of the calf instead of shechting in according to Jewish law. The explanation of that is also simple enough, the Rambam said, as if reading his thoughts. You know, of course, that when a calf is removed from its mother by a Caesarean cut, after the mother had been geschachten according to Jewish law, such a calf requires no shechita, having the benefit of its mother's shechita. I have been raising such a calf for a distinguished visitor." Tears welled up in Rabbi Meir's eyes. He embraced the Rambam and begged him to forgive him. The Rambam readily forgave him, of course. The two scholars spent the next few days in study and discussion, to the great delight of both, but especially of Rabbi Meir. On his return homeward, Rabbi Meir spoke glowingly of the Rambam in every Jewish community where he stopped. From Moshe Rabbeinu to Moshe ben Maimon, there was none like Moshe ben Maimon, was the reputation which Maimonides gained. This was also the report which Rabbi Meir brought back to the rabbis of Germany, who had sent him to become acquainted with the Rambam.